Hi friends, today I am going to discuss about config server and config client. This is with respect to microservices. Okay, so before proceeding, please subscribe my channel, please follow and share with others for more content. Okay, so let's discuss. So what is config server? So suppose you want to externalize configurations. So in an application, every application we have a application properties with all the properties defined, all the configuration defined in that application properties, right? So with respect to environment, like say dev, qa or prod, any environment, some properties may vary, can be different in each environment. We have to externalize these application properties and keep in a GitHub repository. So it will be accessed by config server, and config server is connected to config client. Here config client is all the microservices are called config client. So all the microservices are connected to config server, which access the properties, application properties stored in the GitHub. So with respect to each environment, we say profile in a microservice perspective. So if profile is dev, so in dev environment we access application property dev file. Okay, so if it is a QA environment, we access only QA application property file. So all the config client or microservices are connecting to config server. So config server will fetch all the latest application properties stored in the GitHub. So this GitHub has all the properties files specific to environment. So we can create a we will have a different repository in each environment. So either we can create all the properties files like application property dev, application property QA, application property prod in a same repository and store. Okay, otherwise we will have a separate files with respect to each environment. Okay, so let me show you how to implement this one. So first of all, we need to create a repo in the application GitHub. So I have created a config repo as a repository to store the application properties, and I have created two files, like one is config-cleint dev.properties, config-cleint -prod properties. So here config-cleint is the service name. So with respect to, like suppose if you have n number of services, microservice 1, 2, 3, 4. So for all the microservices you can create a service name -profile, that is environment dot properties. Okay, it should be like, suppose, so you have microservice 1, the name is you can say product service. Okay, so the property application property should be product dot service dot hyphen dev, that is profile dot properties. Okay, so this is having the first part is service name and second part is hyphen, this is profile, that is environment dot properties. So like this you have to create a application property file in a GitHub. Okay, so I have created a here config-cleint is a service name, microservice name. So the hyphen dev is the environment, hyphen prod is the environment. Okay, so I have created two files with respect to dev and prod environments. Okay, like that you can create n number of files with for each services. Okay, let's create the projects. First we have to create a config server. Okay, so I will give the name config server 1 since the project name already exists. So you have to select config, dependency is config server. So this is the dependency and you have to select web, Spring Web. Okay, these two dependency we need to add. Once we add, we have to create this project. The project is created. Okay, so let's add the properties. So I have already the properties, so let me copy. So I will explain you what are these properties. So first one is application name. So we have given application name as config server, so you can give anything. Server port I have given 8888. Okay, you can give anything. So these are the main properties required for accessing the GitHub repo. Okay, so Spring Cloud config server git URI. So this is the URL you can get. Suppose you have created this repository, right? So this is the path I have copied and pasted here. So this is the repo URL. Okay, so you have to pass username, password. Since GitHub for accessing any project from the GitHub, so you need to have a pin or something like this and username. So username you can see, you can go to profile. So here you can see the my username is Raju Estambe. Okay, here also you can see the username Raju Estambe before repo. Okay, password is like, this is not the password which you use to log in the GitHub. This is the token generated for committing or for committing the data or files into Bitbucket GitHub. Okay, so how can you generate that one? I will show you. Go to settings and you have to go to developer settings. So here you have personal access token. This is I have generated for my GitHub. Okay, so here you can choose token option, and here I have already generated, since it is giving option to delete and generate. So you will be having option to generate. You have to give the name of, so I have given git pat as a name of the, so I have already generated. So you have to generate, okay, like this. Okay, let me show you. Okay, so wait, so let's click on this one, and here you can see generate a personal access token. So I have to log in. So you have to give the token name. So I am giving gitpat. So expiration, it is asking, we can select any. I am giving no expiration. So you have to select scopes. So I am selecting all the scopes. So once you select all the checkbox, click on generate token. So here you can see it is generated. Just copy this one. So let me change. So copy this one and paste in this one. So it generated a new token. Okay, so you should have git URI, the repo URL you have to paste, and username and password. This is personal access token. Okay, so let me run this application. So before that one, we will go to pom.xml. Here you can see starter web and Spring Cloud config server. This is the config server dependency which is mainly required for accessing all the properties from GitHub. Okay, let's build this application first. So build is successful. Okay, so one more thing we forgot. So we have to add enable config server annotation. Okay, so let's build one more time. So this is the main annotation, so which auto configure all the configurations related to config server. Okay, so build is successful. Let's start this application. So server is started. It is started in 8888, right? So let's test. So So we have committed okay. Let's go to repository, right? So this is config repo is our repository. So we have committed two files. One is related to dev, one is related to prod application properties, right? So let's access. So the URL should be, you know, the host and port. The next URL path should have this application name and profile, then main, you can give main or the label, we can call it as a the branch. So currently this one is in, if you have different branches, so that branch name you can mention at the end. So it is currently it is in main branch. So if I give also it will work, it will list list down, I mean all the properties, right, from all the branches. If I do, so currently we have only main branch, so I am not giving. If you give, if you have different branches, so it will fetch all the application properties from all the branch. So better, so if you want to fetch from particular branch, so you can pass main the branch name. So first one is application name, the second one is profile, that is environment, third one is branch. Okay, the application name is client, config client. So let's hit this. So we have not configured this path anywhere. We don't have any controller in config server, right? So we have not created any controller to get configure this path. Since config server has inbuilt capacity, all the configurations, so it will get application properties with this way of URL. So it should have application name slash the profile slash label, that is branch name. You can see the response. So it is giving profiles dev. So we have passed dev, right? So config client is the name of the application. So it gives the version, label. So you can see label as a main is the branch. Okay, state, here you can see property sources. So we have stored username and password. So let's go to here. So here you can see we have stored two properties, username, password, that is dev. So it is returning username dev, password dev, right? Okay, so let's test for prod. Sorry, okay, so let's test for prod. Okay, so here you can see username prod and password prod. Let's go to that file. You can see username prod I have given in config client prod and password prod I have given, right? So this is how properties are accessed by application config server. So now we have to create a config client, so which access all the properties through config server. Okay, let's create a project. So let's say config client 1. So we have to add dependency called config client, then web. So these two properties required. So let's make the application properties changes. So have that properties. So it has two properties, that is Spring config import config server colon the URL where config server is running, that is like localhost 8888 where config server is running. So this is the main property, Spring config import config server. You should not misspell, or this spelling should be like this only, config server. It will import all the properties from config server which we stored in the git repo. Okay, then this is the application name, config client I have given, and we have, let's create a controller. Okay, so I have that already. Let me copy this code. So I have created a my controller class. So I have a method get property. So I am using a value annotation to access the user password. Okay, so let's print. Okay, I am just returning user password. What is the password we have stored? Since I don't have that user password defined in this application property, so this should get user password from the application property we stored in the git, right? So for each specific, suppose you are you have deployed this application in dev environment. So the profile you have to access, that is only dev property, right? So for that one you have to pass the profile. So how to pass the profile? That should be dynamic, right? So for this application I have to pass it as a argument, bring profiles dot active equal to dev. So this is the Spring profile, active profile. I am passing it as a dev, that is passed as a argument to the application. So suppose you run this application in production. So the argument we pass Spring profiles dot active, it is as a prod. So it changes from environment to environment, right? So the only environment specific properties are accessed. So we have to make it dynamic. We so why I didn't copy in this application property is, so we are committing this code, right? The code remains same for all the environment. Okay, we cannot change application property here from a specific to environment. So I cannot write spring profile dot active equal to dev. So if I write here, so I have if I commit this code in dev, right, it works. So the same code if I merge into production, right, so it is taking dev as a profile, but production it has to access prod application properties, right? So this will not work. So the profile has to be dynamic. So that is why I am passing the profile as a argument in the. So while running the application you can pass it as a. So we run application using a jar, right, java command, java jar command. So there you can pass it as a argument. Let me run this application one more time. Okay, oh sorry, I ran wrong one. Okay, so server is run. So this is server. Okay, sorry. It's my mistake. Let me delete this one from server. So it is already running. Let me rerun this one. So server is started. So we have to actually add the profile in the client, right? So let's run this one first. So it is failed because the configuration. Okay, let's delete all these. So the build is failed because let's run this application. Wait. So we have not passed sorry, it is wait, what we have given port, okay. So we are getting uh, you know this error, user password we are accessing in the controller, right? So we have not passed the profile, right, as a argument. So we have to pass argument spring profiles active equal to dev. This argument we have to pass. So we have to run the server. So you can see server is started in port 8080. So now we can test the properties using by this controller, okay. So it is running in 8080. So this is the endpoint where we are hitting this config client server. So you can see value of user password is dev. So that is what we are returning in the client application, config client application. So you can see in the property, application property, we have storing user dot name, user dot password as a dev only, right? So we are able to access the property, externalized property, which is stored in the Git, right? So let's change. Suppose if this application is deployed in production, so we have to access production property, this file client config client hyphen prod dot properties, where we have stored username as a prod, password as prod, right? So how to access this property file? So when we deploy this application in production, so we have to first, let me stop this one. You have seen, right? So in the argument we are passing the profile as a dev. So if you are deploying the application in prod, you have to pass it as a prod. Now run the application. So application is started. Let's test this endpoint. You can see the value of user password is prod. Since it is the application is deployed in prod and the profile we are accessing is prod, right? So it will access this file only. So it is returning prod as a password. So this is how we can externalize application property and store in a GitHub and access all these property through config server, okay, and config client will access all the properties through config server, okay. So thank you so much. Let me stop.